Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Kwon Jang-woo, and it's good to have you with us. With the details of the next North Korea-US summit now set, focus turns to the negotiations and what the two sides are looking to get from each other. How far is Kim Jong-un willing to denuclearize, and what is Trump offering in return? We'll look at the issue closer later in the show. But first, we get to the latest headlines by turning to Devin Whiting at the News Center. Devin?
Hi, Jung-ho. It's been confirmed that Vietnam has sent its foreign minister to North Korea ahead of the summit later this month in Hanoi. He's there now, and his visit has prompted speculation that while in Vietnam to meet President Trump, Kim Jong-un will attend a summit with his Vietnamese counterpart as well. Kim Yo-sun has this report.
Vietnam's Foreign Minister Pham Binh Minh is visiting North Korea from February 12th to 14th ahead of this month's planned summit in Hanoi between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump. While no details have been announced, the spokesperson for Vietnam's foreign ministry said via Twitter on Monday that such a visit comes at the invitation of North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Yong-ho. It looks likely that the Vietnamese foreign minister will be discussing Kim Jong-un's specific itinerary when he's in Hanoi. He could also sit down with Kim. Amid speculation, the North Korean leader could visit Vietnam as a guest of the state. If this takes place, a North Korea-Vietnam summit could take place either before or after the much-anticipated Pyongyang-Washington summit. This would be another significant diplomatic event for Pyongyang alongside the North Korea-US summit itself. Meanwhile, Lee Yong-ho visited Vietnam in November last year to benchmark Hanoi's Doi Moi, or the Economic Liberalization Initiative. When Kim Jong-un visits Vietnam, he will become the first North Korean leader to do so in some 5 decades. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United States have reaffirmed their determination to realize the full, final, and verified denuclearization of North Korea. That's according to a statement released by the U.S. State Department on Monday after Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan's meeting with South Korean National Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang in Washington. The two reaffirmed their country's ironclad alliance in achieving that goal. They also agreed on their mutual commitment to strengthening trilateral cooperation with Japan and achieving their shared vision of developing the Indo-Pacific region. Speaker Moon and his delegates will be meeting with U.S. senators before leaving on Friday. A U.S. Special Envoy for North Korea, Mark Lambert, is in Russia to discuss the North's denuclearization ahead of the second Kim-Trump summit. The State Department told VOA that Lambert headed to Moscow on Monday. During the 2-day visit, he'll be meeting with Russian officials and North Korean experts as part of diplomatic efforts to achieve the North's final fully verified denuclearization. According to TASS, the U.S. envoy had frank and constructive talks with the Russian Foreign Ministry's ambassador-at-large, Oleg Burmistrov, and Deputy Foreign Minister Igor Morgulov. Starting today, a group of more than 250 South Koreans are on a 2-day trip to the north. They're from major South Korean civic groups representing all walks of life, as well as a few lawmakers and figures related to inter-Korean economic cooperation. The groups will be meeting with their North Korean counterparts. They're planning to suggest deepening inter-Korean interactions and exchanges in various fields, for example, enabling a temple stay program at a North Korean temple, and holding a joint academic event for educators. Cooperation over the issue of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women will also be proposed. South Korean President Moon Jae-in chaired the 6th cabinet meeting of 2019 this morning, using the opportunity to address the significance of and his expectations for the regulatory sandbox that's being implemented in South Korea for the first time. Here's the president.
규제 샌드박스는 혁신 경제의 실험장입니다. 새로운 기술과 서비스가 국민의 생명과 안전, 건강에 위해가 되지 않는 한 선허용 후규제의 원칙에 따라 마음껏 도전하고 새로운 시도를 해볼 수 있도록 기회를 열어주자는 것이 핵심입니다.
The meeting comes a day after the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy announced its approval of regulatory exemption applications from 4 companies. President Moon stressed the government needs to be a strong supporter of South Korean companies trying to innovate by leveraging what he calls the world's most advanced regulatory sandbox system. He also urged the cabinet to promote the system so more companies can take advantage of it while informing the public of its benefits. The U.S. and China are inching closer to the deadline for a new trade deal, but in the meantime, the U.S. has angered China by sending 2 warships close to the disputed South China Sea. Arirang tells us more.
The USS Spruance and USS Preble conducted what the US Navy called a freedom of navigation operation within 22 kilometers of the Spratly Islands on Monday. A spokesman for the 7th Fleet said the mission was conducted in order to challenge excessive maritime claims and preserve access to the waterways as governed by international law. Such exercises have often been carried out by the US Navy and have been the cause of diplomatic tensions between Washington and Beijing. China's foreign ministry issued an angry response.
Relevant activities at the U.S. warships violated China's sovereignty and damaged peace, security, and good order in relevant waters. China expresses firm opposition and dissatisfaction to this.
The spokesperson also demanded the US stop what she called its provocative actions, adding her country will take necessary actions to protect state sovereignty. Beijing's warning came as officials from both sides were in the Chinese capital for a new round of trade talks this week. It remains to be seen if Monday's operation will impact those negotiations. China claims most of the energy-rich South China Sea, as do several of its neighbors, including the Philippines, Vietnam and Taiwan. China's claim was largely discredited by an international arbitration tribunal 3 years ago, but Beijing has rejected the ruling. The Chinese ministry has since bolstered its presence in the region, deploying military hardware and other defense systems. Noadam, Arirang News.
It was almost 5 years ago when a South Korean ferry sank off the country's southwestern coast, killing more than 300 people, most of them high school students. Those young victims today were honored in a graduation ceremony and were posthumously awarded their diplomas. Kim Mo-gyeon was there and filed this report.
3 years later than their peers, students of Tamwon High School who died in the Sewol-ho ferry disaster on April 16, 2014, have received an honorary graduation ceremony. A total of 250 students who lost their lives in the nation's biggest maritime disaster have finally received their honorary diplomas after their education was tragically cut short. The ceremony kicked off with a calling of the names of each student as their pictures were presented on the screen. As their names were announced, parents and siblings cried and shouted out the names of their children in despair.
There is nothing that can comfort us except for our children coming back to us. Many of us parents feel this way, and this is why many of the seats are vacant. But we pushed through with the ceremony for the safety and honor of our children.
There are many parents who are still traumatized from the disaster, and many of us are still hurting. I am afraid that my child will be forgotten as time passes.
More than 500 people gathered at the high school in Ansan City, including Education Minister Yoo Eun-hye and Lee Jae-jung, the Superintendent of Education for Gyeonggi-do Province. There were several remembrance speeches, one of which was from a fellow student.
I could fill this letter with "I miss you" because that's what I really want to say, but today I will instead say congratulations. We will never forget all of you until we meet again.
Aside from those who directly knew the victims, other citizens also came to pay their respects, hoping that no such tragedy ever occurs again.
It breaks my heart to see many of the families in sorrow. I see a lot of students assisting the ceremony, and I hope that we all work hard for this young generation to live in a better society.
The graduation had been postponed since 2016 as the bereaved families refused to attend it until the bodies of several missing students were recovered. But despite 2 students still missing, the families this time requested for the ceremony to take place this year. Kim Mo-gyeon, Arirang News.
I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines.
Officials from North Korea and the US are set for additional working-level talks over the next few days as they prepare for the second meeting between Kim Jong-un and President Trump at the end of the month. Park Hee-jun takes us through what is on the line in their discussions.
With only 2 weeks remaining until the second North Korea-US summit, a key question remains. Will North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and US President Donald Trump forge a deal that can satisfy both sides? North Korea and the US are searching for a balance between what Pyongyang should do to fulfill its commitments toward denuclearization and what Washington should offer in return. Dismantling and verifying the North's Yeongbyeon Nuclear Complex will be the priority, as it's a key facility that produces both plutonium and uranium, two essential materials for making nuclear weapons. Kim mentioned it in the Pyongyang Joint Declaration last September. U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun also recently said at Stanford University that Kim pledged to shut it down. And ideal concessions from the U.S. could involve declaring an end to the Korean War and setting up a liaison office in Pyongyang. North Korea has also been demanding sanctions relief, but that would likely require a bolder step than destroying the Yeongbyeon complex. These were among the issues discussed in Pyongyang last week by Biegun and its North Korean counterpart, Kim Hyok-chol. The two sides are scheduled to continue their working-level negotiations in a third Asian country next week. Their second round of talks should help lay the groundwork for the two leaders' joint statements and determine whether the second summit has more substance than the first. According to the Blue House, South Korean President Moon Jae-in is also expected to discuss a summit with President Trump, likely over the phone next week. How President Moon mediates between the two sides will also be an important variable that could determine the success of the upcoming Vietnam summits. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
For more today, we have joining us Dr. Bong Young-sik from the Yonsei Institute for North Korean Studies. It's good to have you back on the show today.
Pleased to be here.
So, as we just heard in that report, the current word coming out of the North Korea-US negotiations seems to be that the US is demanding the dismantlement of the Yeongbyeon nuclear facility, while North Korea has been demanding sanctions relief. Do you think that sounds about right at the moment?
Yes, but except for assessing the U.S. demand, United States has demanded far more than just verifiable dismantlement of nuclear facility in Yeongbyeon. United States' position is far more than that. So, in summary, it's a clash between beyond Yeongbyeon, U.S. demand for North Korea, and beyond declaration of the official end of the Korean War. For United States to North Korea. So whether North Korean leadership is going to agree on verifiable denuclearization beyond Yeongbyeon in exchange for the United States providing its intentions to agree on official declaration of the end of the Korean War and probably the gradual establishment of basic diplomatic relationship with mutual liaison offices is the key for the second summit meeting between Kim and Trump.
The Trump administration have in the past said that they will keep pursuing fully fully verified denuclearization. How far away is that then? These are some of the things you've talked about from that full FFVD.
Well, according to some reports that the special representative, Mr. Stephen Biegun, and his team spent 55 hours in Pyongyang, which is a long time by any measure. But the focus of the negotiation by both parties in Pyongyang was not so much about trying to persuade the other side to accept your own demands, but it is to just flesh out and give detailed explanation about their respective demands. For the United States, it's of course demanding North Korea to agree on, process that will eventually lead to, as you said, that FFVD, final and fully verified dismantlement, beyond just the dismantlement of facilities in Yeongbyeon. And for North Korea, it is to, realizing the basic agreements by both leaders in Singapore last June, which are 4 items. First one is ending hostile relationship between United States and North Korea since the Korean War, and the building enduring peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. And third point was a denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And the fourth one was return of the remains of U.S. soldiers fallen during the Korean War. So if from the standpoint of the Kim Jong-un leadership of North Korea has faithfully made and carry out its own promises after the Singapore summit meeting. The third and fourth one, North Korea has not increased the number of nuclear warheads or engaged in any missile or nuclear tests since then. And North Korea did return remains of U.S. soldiers to the United States. So Pyongyang is actually pressuring Washington that where's your corresponding measure after the Singapore summit meeting? The first and second one, how are you going to end the hostile relationship and how are you going to build enduring peace regime? If you insist on continuous economic pressures on us while maintaining economic sanctions, then can you really say, Pyongyang insists, can you really say that you are truly committed to ending the hostile relationship between us since the Korean War? So demanding sanction relief has been justified North Korean leadership in the context of last year's Singapore summit meeting.
Because what's interesting as well, North Korean state media hasn't mentioned really this next upcoming summit with Trump and Kim Jong-un, but the North Korean state media has put pressure on the US by saying, by calling the US to carry out corresponding measures, as you've just said. And so we can probably expect, them to carry on doing this as perhaps maybe like a poke in the side to the Trump administration.
Right. It will continue to emphasize that point, and even after the summit meeting on 27th and 28th in Hanoi, Vietnam, because everything is, actually summarized in the four major points agreed in Singapore summit meeting, and North Korean leadership is really determined to measuring the United States having genuine intention to end the hostility by looking at the U.S. actions in terms of ending or changing at least the existing economic sanctions on North Korea.
Much skepticism remains about what Trump can get out of this next meeting and how far he can get it. But then the White House has tried to counter some of the skepticism by issuing a press release, taking excerpts from a op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, It was entitled, Trump is Serious About Diplomacy with North Korea, and it was written by Todd Lindbergh, a research fellow at the Hudson Institute, and he argued Trump has shown that he is fully committed to the final fully verified denuclearization of North Korea and praised his personal approach with Kim Jong-un. What do you make of the fact that what do you make of this piece first, and what do you make of the fact that the White House has gone out to issue this press release?
Well, what do I make out of this? Any friend is a good friend when you're in a very difficult and desperate situation. There has been mounting pressure, mostly coming out of very skeptical members of the House of Representatives after the midterm election in last November, including the argument that if there's no guarantee of concrete result, in terms of the final and fully verified denuclearization by North Korean leadership, President Trump should not have the summit meeting with North Korean leader Chairman Kim Jong-un. So this kind of article is very helpful for the Trump administration to defend its policy toward Kim Jong-un regime in North Korea. And it's a fairly reasonable defense, because it is true that President Trump's approach to North Korea is in its own category. It is a very new approach compared to the previous administration's engagement with North Korea. Previous presidents of the United States never really forced a very personal approach to the top leadership of North Korea, and the negotiation with North Korea on missile nuclear issues were always bottom up, not top down. So it is premature for even skeptics to criticize or conclude that Trump's own approach to North Korea has already failed. The truth is not out there yet. The juries are still out there, so we have to wait and see what kind of a denuclearization effort will be actually materialized after the summit meeting in Vietnam this month.
That summit is really going to be the real test, I guess, of Trump's diplomacy with North Korea. Would you agree?
Right, you can be as skeptical as you want to be, but you have to see the result. You have to see the score after the game is officially over.
Right, let's turn to what's going on in North Korea as well. So the Vietnamese foreign minister is in North Korea for a 3-day trip. He's said to have been invited by his North Korean counterpart, and it seems that arrangements are being made for a state visit when Kim visits Vietnam for the summit with Trump. Now, if it does turn out to be a state visit, it will be the first one a North Korean leader has taken since Kim Il-sung in 1964, 55 years ago. Now, how significant is that?
It is very significant. Not only Kim Jong-un regime of North Korea needs to make it a well-orchestrated summit meeting with the U.S. president in terms of getting what it wants from the United States in exchange for any types of denuclearization promises. But at the same time, Kim Jong-un must be really conscious of what kind of image and message he will be delivering to his domestic audiences. Because North Korea's official policy, the Pyeongjin policy, the simultaneous pursuit of nuclear weapon development and economic development, has been lopsided in favor of the first goal, developing nuclear weapons. So now it's time for Kim Jong-un to assure his people that prosperity is coming. Prosperity is coming because of this great leadership of Kim Jong-un. So by showing very positive image of his actions while he stayed in Vietnam, he can catch a lot of birds at the same time. First, he has been very carefully but persistently imitating his grandfather's image, the great leader Kim Il-sung, revered as a deity by North Korean people. So he can promote his image as the next Kim Il-sung, the great leader. His grandfather was the victor in the Korean War against the greatest imperial power, which was the United States in the Korean War, according to the official narratives of North Korean government. Then Kim Jong-un can, show himself as the new Kim Il-sung, the new great leader who is a victor, leading the republic to the, time of prosperity, not just a military victory. So it is very important for Kim Jong-un to get the right message and images that can be fully utilized, probably his own sister Kim Yo-jong, who's in charge of propaganda, to persuade the North Korean public that we might have to make the bold strategic decision to turn our focus from nuclear missile development to economic development.
Interesting. I want to get your thoughts on one more story that's coming up as well. So, U.S. businessman and investment guru Jim Rogers has talked up about the potential of North Korea in the past before, and it seems like the word has reached Kim Jong-un because there are reports now saying that Rogers has been invited by Pyongyang to visit next month. What do you make of these reports? Do you find them credible at all?
I think so, because Kim Jong-un must have realized that it has to send the right message to increase the credibility of North Korean leadership committed to economic development. Because North Korean economy may be a quite attractive new frontier for a lot of foreign investors, but North Korea's system is still very far away from basic market economy. For instance, when Egyptian phone company Orascom wanted to leave the country after the contract was expired with a huge profit it had made by monopolizing the phone business in North Korea, North Korean government basically told the Orascom company that you can leave, but we are going to exchange your profit in US dollars, not according to the fluctuating international exchange rate, but official exchange rate, which would have cut the profit of Orascom, the foreign company, by 90%. So Orascom had to stay. So as long as North Korean leadership failed to show to potential investors that North Korean leadership is going to respect basic rules of capitalism and market economy, including property rights, contracts, then even Jim Rogers and others would not dare to put their money, despite many attractive features North Korea has as a backward economy with great potential for future economic development. So what kind of message Kim Jong-un is going to deliver to Mr. Jim Rogers, one of the major gurus in terms of international investment, is a very important barometer for other investors to think about their decision to put their money in North Korea or not.
We'll have to end it there. Thank you for coming in today and sharing us your insights.
You're welcome.
And that's where we wrap things up. I'll be back same time tomorrow. But in the meantime, do stay tuned to Arirang for our later newscasts to get all the latest updates. Thank you for watching and hope you can join us again next time. Goodbye.
Your delivery has arrived. There is no country like Korea where you can order a variety of foods